Many people, when they start researching Bremerton, find out that it is exactly what they're looking for. Maybe they need proximity to the ferry systems, or maybe they need to be close to Naval Base Kitsap Bremerton or PSNS. That's great. Additionally, many people find out when they start researching Bremerton that this is actually not where they want to live. So in this video, we're going to check out some of the surrounding areas and see how they compare to Bremerton. So stay tuned till the end. What's up, everybody? It's Cassandra Lopez with the Living in Bremerton channel. If you're new to the channel, you're going to want to go ahead and subscribe. This channel is all about living in Bremerton. So whether you are relocating here for the first time or maybe you're already here, be sure to subscribe, tap that little bell. And did you know that you can reach out to me directly? This is my cell phone and my email, so please feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to support your relocation to Bremerton, Washington. First step in our list of neighboring surrounding areas to Bremerton is Silverdale. It is just to the north, and a couple of cool things about Silverdale that people find attractive is the school district. For one, it's in Central Kitsap School District, which is a great district. If we're going strictly by ratings according to niche.com, which I'll provide a link to that in the description, Central Kitsap School District is slightly more favorable. I will say that I've had my kids both in the Bremerton School District and Central Kitsap, so I think both are great. I have no negative experiences or complaints, but I know that's very subjective, so be sure to check that out for yourself. If we are getting really technical, parts of Bremerton are in the Bremerton School District and other parts are in the Central Kitsap School District, so it really just depends on where you're looking. There is an option for me to help you find properties that are strictly in one or the other, so if you need help defining that line, I can certainly help out there. Another thing people like about Silverdale are its amenities, specifically a lot of its commercial and industry type amenities. It has every restaurant you could think of. It has any business you can think of, like home improvement stores or office supply stores. It has a million coffee shops, as you might imagine, shipping centers, all kinds of retail. Silverdale is where the Kitsap Mall is. So really, you're just super close to everything if you live in Silverdale. Another thing that people find favorable about living in Silverdale is that it's actually a pretty proximal commute if you are still commuting to Naval Base Kitsap Bremerton or Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. And it's also really close to Bangor, so if you're going to the sub base just a little bit north of that. So it's a pretty centralized location in that regard. So if you're not concerned about their commute and you want to add 10 or 15 minutes, then Silverdale might be a great place for you as well. When compared to Bremerton, Silverdale's homes tend to be a little bit newer. Bremerton can range all the way from the late 1800s all the way to brand new construction, whereas Silverdale didn't start being built out until maybe around the 50s, 60s. So mid-century to newer. So a lot of the construction is a lot newer. Additionally, you will have easy access to any kind of high-speed internet and cable, which is super important if you are working from home these days. I know that I have people looking for that specifically. They will not consider homes that don't have high-speed internet for a myriad of reasons, but I know that's super important to everybody these days, whether it be cable or fiber optic, so you should be good to go there. Some of the cons about living in Silverdale are it's a little bit more expensive than Bremerton. You can see on this graph that the average sales price year to date in Bremerton is $479,000. You switch over into Silverdale and that average bumps up to about $602,000. So it's pretty significant. Property taxes can tend to be a little higher as well, so your cost of living will likely be a little bit more if you are living in Silverdale versus Bremerton. Another con about living in Silverdale is that the infrastructure doesn't quite support the rapidly growing population. So it's a really dense urban vibe with really intense traffic, especially during peak hours. And it can just get really congested, especially if you're trying to travel through the center of Silverdale, which is where all the shopping and stuff is, to get to the surrounding areas which is where all the residential homes and apartments are. Depending on where you're living, you may experience quite a bit of freeway and or traffic noise in general. The next area we're going to talk about is Poulsbo. Poulsbo is a little bit north of Silverdale. It is considered North Kitsap. And a lot of people like Poulsbo for its quaint, charming Norwegian heritage flair that it has. in this wonderful little downtown with all of its artisan shops and everything. So it's very charming, it's very iconic, and a lot of people are drawn to that. Another reason people like living in Poulsbo is the school district. According to niche.com, it is again more favorable than the Bremerton district. So I encourage you to head there yourself, research everything you can about the school district to make sure it suits what you're looking for, because as we know, again, that's very subjective. Poulsbo still has pretty decent ferry access. You're gonna head all the way out to the Bainbridge Island ferry, so that's gonna be a little bit more of a drive than if you lived in Bremerton and wanted to catch the Bremerton ferry. Poulsbo is just about halfway between both, actually, so if one schedule didn't vibe with you and you had to catch the other ferry, you could certainly do that, because Bainbridge and Bremerton both go to the same dock, Coleman Dock in Seattle. And as I mentioned before, Poulsbo is just very quaint, very cute. It's got a really great sense of community. People who live there really tend to love living there. So, you know, you live there and you have great freeway access. You're pretty close to the Hood Canal Bridge if you wanted to head over to the peninsula for a weekend or whatever. And it's really not that much farther to get to. It's about 10 extra minutes up the freeway from Silverdale. There's a few cons that go with living in Poulsbo, and one of them is the cost of living. Remember before how we discussed the average home price in Bremerton right now is $479,000. Right now in Poulsbo, it's approaching $838,000. So we are almost double, and that just kind of comes with the territory. Property taxes are higher up there. So if you plan on living in Poulsbo, your dollar may not go as far, and your cost of living will certainly be higher. Another con with living in Poulsbo is there might be fewer amenities based on what you're looking for, and they are spread out quite a bit. So there's not one centralized shopping location. Bremerton, there really isn't one centralized either, but everything is geographically really close. Whereas Poulsbo is everything is going to be kind of geographically spread out. So your drive time is going to be a little bit longer to get from A to B, and you're going to have to go a little farther to find that shop or store or feature that you're looking for. If you're living in Poulsbo and working in Bremerton, your commute's going to be significantly higher, anywhere from 25 to maybe even 45 minutes, depending on if you're deep Poulsbo to deep Bremerton or just wherever from A to B. Another thing that goes along with that is some areas in Poulsbo can be really, really remote. If you're heading out on Bond Road, or maybe you're heading out towards Lowfall, you can tend to drop your cell service pretty easily. Maybe cable and internet won't be accessible. You're looking at satellite or DSL possibly versus cable or fiber optics. So definitely something to take into account if you're looking in the Poulsbo area. Now we're going to head west of Bremerton to Seebeck. This is one of the surrounding areas that a lot of people like. Seebeck has a lot going for it. It is the westernmost community in Kitsap County and is subject to some of the most amazing waterfront properties and view properties that we have here in Kitsap, and it's a really, really phenomenal place to live if that's what you're after. If you are looking for acreage and seclusion and a more rural vibe, Seebeck has definitely got all of that going for it. You can pretty much have all the acreage you want. I know there's properties for sale right now upwards of 20 acres or more. So if you're looking for a lot of land, this might be a good area for you to check out. Some cons about living in Seebeck is that it is far. It is going to add to your commute, whether you're working in Bremerton or maybe you're working up at Bangor or Silverdale or anywhere in between. And depending on how far Seebeck you are, your commute can be upwards of 45 minutes or so, just depending on where you're headed. Another con about Seebeck is that for whatever reason, the way that our weather systems roll in from the coast, Seebeck tends to be the first and hardest hit with the weather. For example, we just recently had a bunch of inches of snow. We got 6 inches of snow at my house. I think at Seebeck they probably had 8 or 10 or more. And with that, in the priority list of plowing the roads and clearing the roads, Seebeck is going to be at the bottom of that list because there are a lot of county only maintained roads or private roads that aren't county maintained at all that don't even get touched at some point. That also goes with power outages. So if the power goes out due to a storm or a tree falling or whatever, they're usually the last to get service back out there as well. So you're kind of off the grid in a sense, especially when it comes to restoring power and getting roads plowed and all that stuff. Because Seebeck is so rural, our cable and fiber optics haven't made it out there yet, so you're likely going to be looking at satellite or DSL for your cable and internet. So just something to keep in mind if you need that for working from home or gaming or anything like that. Last on our list today of surrounding areas of Bremerton is Port Orchard. Port Orchard is South Kitsap, so this is the only area in South Kitsap that we've talked about today. It encompasses quite a large geographic range of land, and some pros to living in Port Orchard are that the cost of living is a little bit lower. Property taxes are a little bit lower. Average home price is slightly higher than Bremerton at $530, whereas Bremerton's at $478, but that's also to account for some of these really large properties that Port Orchard also has. So Port Orchard is got a ton of equestrian style properties, cross fence, pastured, paddock, all that stuff. So those tend to be a little bit more expensive. So if you're raising horses or you're raising goats, or you have chickens or you pigs or whatever you have, there's property out there that can accommodate that type of lifestyle and business. But to offset, the property taxes tend to be a little bit lower. Whereas Bremerton tends to be more city-sized lots and maybe some suburban neighborhoods with a few scattered acreage properties, Port Orchard will tend to be more of the acreage style properties. And we talked about Seebeck having acreage. Seebeck is still very, very, very forested and not cleared so much. Whereas a lot of properties in Port Orchard are level, cleared, totally ready to go. So if you have a lifestyle that type of property can support, you're gonna find it more readily in Port Orchard, whereas you would in Seebeck, because you're not gonna have to, again, take those preliminary steps to get anything cleared or anything like that. This is a big reason that a lot of people find living in Port Orchard really favorable, especially if they're working in Bremerton, specifically the shipyard or Naval Base Kitsap Bremerton. There is a foot ferry that goes from downtown Port Orchard to the ferry terminal in Bremerton. So it's a 5-minute boat ride. It's a walk-on only. I think you may be able to take your bicycle as well, but I'm not sure. You'll have to double check that. It is maintained and operated by Kitsap Transit. So you can take the bus or ride your bike or drive or walk or whatever to the downtown Port Orchard ferry terminal there and literally walk on the ferry, 5-minute boat ride, and you're in Bremerton. It's literally right across Sinclair Inlet. So it's super easy, super accessible, so they can take advantage of that lower cost of living and lower property taxes and still work in Bremerton and not pay the higher cost of living that it is over there. So some of the cons to living in Port Orchard are probably strictly the opposite of the pros. So if you are driving from Bremerton to Port Orchard and vice versa for your commute, you are likely going to hit what's called shipyard traffic. So this is where Highway 3, which is 2 lanes south, and Charleston Boulevard, which is also 2 lanes south, are bottlenecking into 2 lanes. You're going from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and in there somewhere it's like down to 1 lane for like 50 feet. It's a ridiculous bottleneck and it backs up for miles, and it's every single day, Monday through Friday. So weekends, obviously you don't see it, but if you're driving, you're gonna hit that anywhere from 2:30 to 6 o'clock every day, and it's going to double your commute time. Let's say you missed that traffic and you didn't have any of that backup, you still may be looking at really long commutes, because some areas in Port Orchard, like if you're headed out to Manchester, or maybe you're all the way down to Olalla, which is the southernmost community in Kitsap County before you get to Pierce County and Gig Harbor, some of those places are 45 minutes or 50 minutes away. It's quite a drive. Another con why people might not want to live in Port Orchard or may find unfavorable is the school district isn't ranked top notch. That has to do with a history of failed from the voters and the taxpayers, which has recently changed. So we're hoping to see South Kitsap be up and coming and getting back in the ranks. So if you have little ones and school district is important to you, I encourage you to research all of that on your own to make sure that that is what you need for your kiddo. Another con to living in Port Orchard is their downtown isn't as vibrant as maybe other downtowns would look like. Bremerton, I know the mayor in Bremerton has been working really, really hard to give downtown Bremerton a facelift over the past 10 years or so, and he's done a great job. Compared to Poulsbo and then Silverdale and then Bremerton, Port Orchard just doesn't look as vibrant or inviting as all those other downtowns might. As mentioned before, head over to niche.com. You can look up school districts and specific schools. So if you are looking at a specific home and you want to see what elementary or middle or high school serves that home, you can look up actual individual school ratings, which is really cool. So I encourage you to do that. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Tap that little bell so you're notified every time I drop a new video. Please share this with a friend if you think they might benefit. Be sure to let me know how I can support your relocation to Bremerton. Bye for now.